The mystery of death, what really happens before we leave this world. Today we're going to talk about a subject that is both mysterious and heavy, yet one that none of us can truly avoid: death. From the very moment we are born, death is quietly waiting at the end of our journey. It is the natural conclusion to the story of life. And yet, despite this inevitability, we humans carry so many questions about it. What exactly happens when someone is about to die? Do we know, deep down, that the end is approaching? Are those strange experiences people report, so-called near-death experiences, actually real, or just hallucinations created by a desperate brain? To explore these questions, we'll draw on the testimony of dozens of people who came face-to-face with death and lived to talk about it. We'll also look at what modern science has uncovered. Together, their stories and the research findings allow us to gently lift the veil on what happens in those final moments. Near-death experiences, a glimpse beyond. When people think of death, many immediately picture near-death experiences, episodes where someone's heart has stopped, breathing has ceased, and yet, in that strange space between life and death, they report extraordinary visions. This concept was first brought into mainstream conversation in 1975 by Dr. Raymond Moody, an American physician who collected stories from people who had died in a medical sense and then been revived. He discovered recurring themes: tunnels of light, sensations of leaving the body, encounters with loved ones who had already passed. Over the years, more and more individuals have stepped forward to describe their brushes with death, making the topic less abstract and more personal. Take the story of Michael Thompson, a 13-year-old boy from Ohio who underwent emergency surgery after his appendix ruptured. As the anesthesia pulled him into unconsciousness, Michael recalled finding himself in a long tunnel filled with a strange, but not frightening darkness. He described seeing unfamiliar, almost mystical figures around him. Then an elderly man, someone he didn't recognize, told him, "It's not your time yet. You have to go back." Moments later, Michael found himself in a lush, dreamlike garden where he saw his grandmother, who had passed away years earlier, and even a childhood friend who had died tragically young. They smiled at him warmly. Finally, his grandmother seemed to guide him back toward the hospital, and the next thing he knew, he opened his eyes in the recovery room. Now, you might be tempted to dismiss this as a child's imagination, but statistics show otherwise. Studies suggest that between 5% and 10% of people worldwide report some form of near-death experience during their lifetime. That's millions of individuals. One of the most famous medical studies took place in the Netherlands in 2001 and was published in The Lancet, one of the most respected medical journals in the world. Researchers followed 344 patients who had experienced cardiac arrest, meaning their heart stopped and they were clinically dead for a period of time. Among these patients, 62 described near-death experiences in detail. What's fascinating is how similar their stories were, even though they came from very different backgrounds and beliefs. 24% said they felt as if their soul had left their body. They described floating above the hospital bed, watching doctors and nurses working frantically to save their life. 31% reported traveling through a tunnel, dark, mysterious, with a light at the end that drew them forward. 23% said they encountered a glowing presence, a kind of light unlike sunlight or electric bulbs. It felt warm, soft, and benevolent, almost like love itself taking shape. 29% described being in a vast cosmic space, surrounded by endless stars, and instead of fear, they felt peaceful and calm. 13% reported a life review, as though their entire past flashed before their eyes, childhood scenes, pivotal choices, happy and painful moments alike, playing out like a movie reel. These accounts are not confined to Europe or America. In China, Japan, and even among survivors of natural disasters, similar reports have surfaced. One particularly telling example comes from a survey of earthquake survivors. More than half reported seeing rapid flashes of life memories, and many described floating above their bodies during the chaos. These stories, while remarkable, raise an important question: are they glimpses into another world, or simply the result of a brain under extreme stress? A scientific look. Why the brain creates these experiences. Scientists, of course, have searched for explanations that do not involve the supernatural. And while there's still much mystery, they've made significant progress. The most widely accepted theory is that near-death experiences are a byproduct of the brain's survival instincts. When the body is on the edge of death, starved of oxygen, its heart stopped, the brain goes into overdrive. To protect itself, the brain releases a flood of chemicals, dopamine, norepinephrine, and other neurotransmitters. Under normal circumstances, these substances help us stay alert and focused. But in massive, desperate doses, they can create vivid hallucinations, feelings of euphoria, and strange distortions of time and space. Think of the brain as a sophisticated electrical system. When the power supply is failing, the system throws every last bit of energy into keeping things running. But in the process, circuits can spark, glitch, and misfire. What feels to us like a journey through a tunnel of light or a meeting with a deceased relative may simply be the brain's desperate last attempt to keep consciousness alive. Another explanation points to the temporal lobe of the brain, the area responsible for memory, hearing, and visual processing. When deprived of oxygen, this region can become unstable. As it misfires, it may pull random fragments of memory into the present, producing a rapid life review. Similarly, the sense of floating outside one's body could result from the brain's inability to properly process spatial awareness, creating the illusion of separation between self and body. In other words, what feels profoundly spiritual may in fact be the biology of survival at work. The phenomenon of rallying before death. Beyond near-death experiences, there is another strange but often observed occurrence, a sudden burst of clarity and energy shortly before death, sometimes called the last rally or terminal lucidity. Many families have witnessed it. A loved one may have been bedridden, barely able to speak, drifting in and out of awareness. Then suddenly, one evening, they sit up, smile, hold conversations, maybe even ask for a favorite meal. It feels like a miracle, like the illness has turned a corner. But more often than not, within hours or days, the person declines rapidly and passes away. Doctors explain this not as magic, but as the body's final effort to survive. As death approaches, the adrenal glands release a surge of stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, that briefly restore strength. At the same time, the body burns through its last reserves of energy molecules, ADP, providing a temporary second wind. It is the last flame before the candle burns out. For families, it is bittersweet. The rally allows one last meaningful exchange, but it also signals that the end is very near. The signs the body gives before death. As difficult as it is to accept, death rarely comes without warning. The body sends signals as it prepares to shut down. Recognizing these can help us better care for loved ones in their final days. Falling temperature and blood pressure. Circulation slows, blood pressure drops, and extremities like hands and feet grow cold. Body temperature steadily decreases until the heart eventually stops. Confusion and sleepiness. A dying person may sleep more and more, eventually slipping into a coma. They may respond less, answer questions with confusion, or seem lost in another world. Changes in the senses. Eyes may lose focus. Vision grows blurry. Hearing often lasts the longest, which is why speaking gently near someone at the end can still be meaningful, even if they don't reply. Difficulty eating and drinking. As digestion slows, appetite fades. Swallowing becomes difficult, and forcing food or water may cause discomfort. Comfort, not feeding, becomes the priority. Irregular breathing. Breathing grows shallow, sometimes stopping for several seconds before resuming. This, Shane Stokes, breathing is a natural step before the final breath. 5 truths about death we should accept. So, after looking at near-death experiences, the science behind them, the rally before passing, and the signs of decline, what lessons can we take away? Here are 5 truths worth remembering. Death is natural. Like the changing of seasons, it is a universal law. Fear is normal, but obsessing over it robs us of the joy of living. Near-death experiences are real, but they are biological. They feel mystical, but but research shows they are products of the brain under extreme conditions, not proof of an afterlife. The final rally is the body's last effort. If a loved one suddenly improves, cherish the moment, but understand it is usually temporary. Use that time for presence and love. Dying comes with signals. Knowing what to expect allows us to care with dignity, warming cold hands, speaking softly, respecting silence. Talking about death is not unlucky, it is wise. In American culture especially, many families avoid the topic. Yet planning, whether you want hospice at home or hospital care, whether you prefer burial or cremation, reduces stress and regret later. Closing thoughts. Yes, today's subject is heavy, but it is also necessary. To speak about death is not to bring it closer, but to live more wisely. The meaning of life is not measured in years alone, but in how deeply we have lived, how fully we have loved, and how warmly we have been loved in return. When the time comes, to face death with calm acceptance and to say goodbye with gentleness is the truest way to honor the gift of life itself. So, let us live well today, appreciate the moments we still hold, and not shy away from discussing the inevitable. For in doing so, we not only prepare for the end, we enrich the middle.